Welcome, everyone, to the Eugene City Council meeting for September 27th. We have a little bit of business we want to finish up from our work session to start out with. And in the meantime, I want to remind you of two things. One is that I wanted to ask everybody who signed up to speak to 2 minutes instead of 3.
May I make a motion? I move that we leave it at 3 minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please indicate.
Mayor, point of question, please.
Yes,
How many have you signed up?
37.
Okay, may I speak to the motion then?
Surely.
We spent a long time listening to other people, an hour and a half, and I think these people have come here to speak. I think that they will probably shorten it if they can, but the ones who've prepared 3 minutes and need it should have it, I think. I think we should listen as long as it takes. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to, yes.
Normally, I would probably vote in favor of shortening it to 2 minutes, but this is a long-term decision, and I want to hear from everybody, so I'll vote in favor of 3.
All right, then. We're ready to vote on it. All those in favor of Betty's motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4. In opposition? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, I will vote for go back to 3 minutes. Okay. All right, so business at hand. Chris, you have a motion to put on the table?
I do. Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Pryor.
Yeah, that's fine. I move that the Eugene City Council offer its full endorsement for the Eugene School District's November 2014 election to renew its local option levy.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 in favor and none in opposition passes. Thank you very much, everybody. Next motion, George Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I have 2 motions, actually.
Okay.
But the first one is move to direct the city manager to immediately initiate selected demolition of City Hall by removing wooden fins, finishes, partitions, mechanical equipment, and hazardous materials, with the exception of structural elements.
Is there a second?
And I'll speak to it if I get a second.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been seconded. Go ahead and talk.
Thank you. Yeah, this work, we're at a crossroads right now, and we haven't decided yet definitively whether we're going to rebuild or build new. No matter which of those options we choose, we'll ultimately end up choosing, all of this work has to be done. Whether the building gets torn down or whether it gets, there's creative deconstruction and it gets remodeled. So really the crews want to do the work is lined up. There's really no reason to delay it. It could start later this week, perhaps, if we pass this motion. It's going to have to be done sooner or later. People are willing and ready. Money's been budgeted. So I think it makes sense to go ahead and do it. Thanks.
All right.
For obvious reasons, I hope those are our only 2 options, so I will vote opposed to that.
Councilor Pryor?
Does your motion have an ending date, or would it be that when we get to that point, we just stop again?
Get to what point?
Once what you have in your motion is accomplished, the asbestos and other stuff, and we got done with that part, would we just stop then?
Well, yes, but my guess is we will probably have made the ultimate decision before we get to that point. Yes, the motion means pretty much what it says, with the exception of structural elements.
Do we know what you mean by structural elements?
Yes, posts, columns, walls, the substructure that holds the whole thing together. That is called a structure, a building structure.
So if I were to not support your motion, my understanding is after Wednesday, the current delay would expire and we would begin demolition again.
Well, depending on what happens on Wednesday.
Depending on what happens on Wednesday, if we don't specifically direct you otherwise.
I'd have to go back and look at your motion.
It was for 2 weeks.
It was for 2 weeks.
So it put us on pause for 2 weeks, so presumably we could...
Presumably, unless you're directed otherwise, the 2 weeks will have expired. Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Okay. Everybody ready to vote on Councilor Brown's motion? All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In opposition? 1, 2... Wait. Yes, so it's 6 in favor and 2 in opposition. It passes. Next motion, Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to direct the city manager to provide by Wednesday's council meeting as much of the following information as is practicable. Number 1, have an analysis of what the rebuild and build new options provide in terms of costs and deliverables for City Hall Phase 2. We haven't talked, well, I'll speak to it if I get a second. Number 2, have Earl Brokaw and team provide dollar amounts for each objection to Turner's estimates. Number 3, give Turner the opportunity to provide a response to Earl Brokaw and team's objections to their estimates. And I'll discuss it if I get a second.
Second.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded.
We haven't really talked about Phase 2. Each of the, we're at the crossroads, and each one, rebuild and build new, provide totally different outcomes for Phase 2 in terms of dollars and what you get for the money that we spend on Phase 1. Either option is going to cost $15 million, but it's what you get for that when we start talking about Phase 2. Then you get radically different deliverables and possibilities. So I think that's why I want to have an analysis and discussion of that. The reason I'd like to see Earl Brokaw provide dollar amounts for each of their objections to Turner's estimates, as I mentioned earlier in the work session, otherwise they're just objections, and anybody can have an objection. But if you don't put a dollar amount to it, it really doesn't mean anything. We have to know specifically what they're objecting to, and I think that's essential, because otherwise, as far as I'm concerned, those 2 or 3 pages in the packet that we got today are meaningless. And number 3, clearly it's only fair to allow Turner to provide a response to those objections if they wish. They may not even want to, but I think that they should be notified tomorrow and allowed to provide a response, whether it's that Wednesday or not. They may not be able to respond by Wednesday. The reason is Turner is a totally competent, respected, experienced global construction company. You've done new projects, remodels, and additions, green building all over the world. Lots of big projects in Asia, all over the United States, Mexico City, the list goes on and on. And I feel that, and by the way, the city made an excellent choice in retaining them for these estimates. I don't know that they could have picked anyone better. So I feel like a company of this stature surely deserves a response to any objections that have been voiced to their estimate. Thank you.
So before we, Councilor Zelenka.
Realistically, you've got tomorrow and Wednesday morning. I mean, realistically, what are you going to be able to do?
I guess I'll have to ask Mike and his team.
It's difficult to answer that sitting here right now. I don't know what's readily available and what we can deliver by then. We'll do our best with whatever motion you give us, and we'll provide as much information as we can, as practicable.
That's a big version, practically.
Yeah, right. Might get something that's meaningless because it doesn't have enough time. I'm not going to support the motion because I am looking at this decision not as Phase 1 and Phase 2, but only Phase 1. I don't see a plan. I don't see any vision. I don't see anything that's even remotely close to anything substantive that would allow us to estimate Phase 2, other than just 60,000 square feet at $200 a square foot is X dollars. That's meaningless to me. So I won't support that part of the motion. I would like to see the other parts, though.
Councilor Poling.
Yeah, I can't support the motion either. We don't know what Phase 2 is even going to look like because we don't know which path we're going to stumble down on Phase 1. Depending on what the rebuild, if that's the decision, looks like, may change the whole outlook at what Phase 2 is going to be. In our original discussions, if we back up, our discussions on this was that we take a multi-phased approach to this, and it was Phase 1 first, and then once that's completed, we take a look at Phase 2 and figure out where we're going from there. I think asking for cost estimates at this time, like Councilor Zelinka said, is just going to be some 60,000 foot estimate at it that everybody in the world is going to take as the final estimate of what it's going to cost from here forward in any conversation. And I think it's wrong to try to put any cost estimate on a Phase 2 that we don't even know what's going to look like.
Councilor Clark.
I'm going to vote in favor of the motion. I think that the detail and depth of information is likely to be limited, and that's reasonable because a day and a half ain't much time to get that together. But I have to say I'm really shocked that we'd make a decision of this substance without some kind of idea of what Phase 2 is going to cost. That absolutely floors me. There are structural issues involved in a retrofit and a build from new that might make those figures wildly different. In some of the information that was presented today, we saw that. So I'd like to know more. I thought that the people that spoke today did an excellent job of helping inform us on that. And if there's no bad information here on a decision of this magnitude. The more we can get, the better. So I'm all for it.
Okay, and is there somebody else? Councilor Taylor?
Thank you. I will support the motion because I think if we end up destroying the current building, we certainly need to know what it might cost to build. And building a small building, we need to think about what that might cost and how we would get the money. Thank you.
Councilor Pryor?
I'm usually always somebody who's in favor of more information, and if my expectations are not high for you of being able to assemble an enormous amount of information, I'm willing to go with whatever you can pull together by Wednesday. So I'm willing to support it in the name of information, but not with an expectation that you're going to have an enormous amount of information available to us then.
Councilor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, the discussion so far just reinforces in my own mind why we need to talk about this, because Turner Construction has provided estimates for Phase 2, and you get, depending on whether you rebuild or whether you build new, you get radically different products for the $15 million that you're spending that have multi-million-dollar implications for actually building Phase 2. So I think it's really essential that we do, and we have not talked about this in depth at council before, and I think it's really very important to do so, so that we can, maintain fiscal responsibility for our constituents. I think they kind of expect us to look at the money really closely on this. This is a really big deal, and Phase 2, there have been estimates done, not detailed, like for Phase 1, all the options in Phase 1, but there have been estimates provided, and I think we need to have a council discussion. Thank you.
Councilor Brown, would you please tell me and all of us what you mean by practicable?
That was a language provided by the Assistant City Attorney, consultation with her boss.
Want to say what that means then?
It's really designed to, as much as they can gather for you in just that day and a half, as much as they can get to you in that day and a half. So there wasn't this is the information that we need. Exactly what I'm hearing the discussion being is we understand it's a very short period of time. We'll get to you as much as we can get.
Councilor Brown?
Just one more thing. Number 2, have a roll call and team provide dollar amounts for each objection to Turner's estimate. They should be able to do that. I mean, they have engineers looked at it supposedly who saw Turner's estimate and said, well, that's wrong. It's going to cost this much. So I don't think that it's going to take like a month or 2 to go down the list and provide figures.
City Manager?
I just want to reiterate, we're not arguing that Turner's estimate was wrong for the scope for what they were asked to do at the time.
Councilor Zelenka?
With that understanding, I'll support it, but I would encourage staff to spend most of their time on the other items than trying to figure out what Phase 2 would cost.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Surratt.
Well, I guess I will support the motion as well, but I am actually very reluctant for us to start a conversation around Phase 2 when we can't make a decision about Phase 1.
All right. On that note, we're going to vote on Councilor Brown's motion. All those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In opposition, 1. It passes. Okay. One more motion. Councilor Evans.
I move that the Eugene City Council direct the city manager to develop a cost analysis for the relocation, repurposement, and preservation of city council chambers in Phase 1 of the City Hall redevelopment project.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded.
Speak to the motion.
You can speak to the motion.
Again, I'm just following up on my inquiry during the work session about preservation of the historical iconic elements of the old City Hall in the new City Hall design. I think it's important to people here in this room and at home that we do have some preservation of our historical buildings, and City Hall represents one of the iconic elements of Eugene, and I think that by the design team's indication that it is possible for the chambers to be moved onto the new footprint, if that's the way that we proceed. I think that that's worth getting a cost analysis of that to see what the possibilities are around that, and to also understand that it is not being relocated for the purpose of meeting in those old chambers as City Council is currently constituted, but to repurpose it for another purpose to be seen later on down the line, probably in Phase 2 of the project development.
Councilor Pryor.
Once again, I'm fine with information, and I appreciate Councilor Evans saying, bring us back some information about what it would cost to move it, mothball it, whatever. I'm guessing for this level of information, we can't have it by Wednesday, so I wouldn't want to set up an expectation that we would have it by Wednesday, but at some point relatively soon, we would get an idea of what those costs would be. A second thing would be, if we do move it and mothball it, with the intention of perhaps doing something with it later on, I would just want to, at the very outset, indicate that my commitment would be that that site is a public site. It'd be used for government and public purpose only, and that any repurposed building on that site, whether it was the council chambers or anything else, would be repurposed for a public use. And I would be very strongly opposed to any use of that site or a portion of that site for anything other than public or government use. I mean, you can build a justice center on half of it, but not a private building. And I'm just making myself clear so that when we talk about mothballing council chambers, it's not so we can use it as a farmer's market or something like that later on.
Councilor Clark.
Pass.
Okay. We're going to vote on this now. All those in favor of Councilor Evans' motion, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. In opposition, 1. Okay. It's 1. It passes. All right. Now we're going to move off of all those motions. Thank you all. We're going to go to the public forum. I do want to say before we go to the public forum, I know that some of you have brought signs, and I've probably been told that they can't be waved in the air. They can be sort of attached to your body. And then I want to also remind people, because we had one person already sort of break this today, and that is that we really try, especially all the time, but especially when we have heartfelt and emotional discussions, that we don't clap, boo, or any of those kinds of things, that we are respectful of everybody and try to make this a safe place for everyone to be. So thank you for that. And so the public forum is an opportunity for individuals to speak to the City Council on any city-related issues, except for those items which have already been heard by a hearings official or are on tonight's agenda as a public hearing. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak. When you come to the podium, please give your name, city of residence, and for Eugene residents, your ward if known. The timer and lights indicate the time you have to speak. The red light indicates the end of 3 minutes. We have to officially open it. And we have 37 people signed up. So first up is Art Bowman, followed by Jamie Vasconcelos.
And don't feel compelled to take all three.
ISIS. So,
a few weeks ago, charges were dropped against the 12
Will you
people.
introduce yourself, please?
Art Bowman, First Ward. A few weeks ago, charges were dropped against the protesters who sat in the city manager's office, known as the Whoville 12. In a statement, a city employee said that this was a sign of the new era of cooperation that had developed between the city and homeless activists, and that things like that weren't necessary. I wish that were true, but if I look at the picture here, it seems like things have gotten worse and less cooperative than they have been in the 5 months since that sit-in happened. I'm hearing reports that the police traditionally roust camps where homeless people hide out. It usually starts about end of October. You've started a month early. I look downtown and I see a series of laws or judicial edicts from the city manager that have been passed, seemingly without the awareness of many council, that are basically designed to criminalize homelessness and make it almost impossible for them to be downtown. I can't help but be reminded of the South African passbook laws when I see these. Businesses are being encouraged to rent sidewalks from the city. Apparently money changes hands, and then they have the right to trespass anyone they want to off these sidewalks. People have been told that the police will be called if they are registering people to vote on a corner. The police have actually been called for someone juggling, not even asking for money, but simply juggling. And as I've mentioned, many of you seem unaware of this. There have been other laws. I mean, I spoke earlier about Kesey Square, where apparently without the city's knowledge, it had been ceded entirely to food cart renters. And a disturbing picture is beginning to emerge. We've got homeless people basically criminalized, despite 2 United Nations Human Rights Commission reports condemning the U.S. for criminalization of homelessness. They are being driven from camps. They're being driven out of downtown. This places an incredible burden on some neighborhoods, such as the Wit, that have traditionally been hospitable and accepting of unhoused people. Many people are irate, and I don't blame them, because this is putting stress in a neighborhood that really is already doing more than its share. In the meantime, you're pointing to several camps that can such as Opportunity Village, the rest stops, that can only house a significant number of the unhoused people in this county. And I'd like to remind you that Lane County is at the national average for homelessness, so it's not like people are flocking here, as is often said. These are people who are mostly from here who have hit on hard times, either through mental health problems, economic distress, or family problems. You know the causes. They're the most vulnerable members of our society, and I see them being assaulted by the government. Thank you.
Jamie Vasconcelos is next, followed by Sarah Huka.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors, city manager, and staff. I couldn't believe what I was hearing when
Please,
the...
would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Jamie Vasconcelos, citizen, live over by Laurelwood Golf Course in Allen's ward. Sorry about that. I was really almost shocked out of my chair to hear that the architect, when he was discussing the costs, shared with us that he only had those costs somewhat prepared and internalized on the new build. Now, how he could come to the decision when he hadn't gotten hard facts yet on the new building and yet could make the decision and state it here for 45 minutes that the remodel was not cost effective, it's amazing. What does he base that on? I'm very glad you asked for him to provide some figures, because to make a $15 million decision and present that information, but I think that goes back to the decision process here. I think the city manager never was directed to go forth with one specific of the two alternative options you had, the rebuild or renovate, but he did. Now, perhaps that's the way managers are. If they aren't given direction, they'll take the lead. Then he hired the architects. That was a hand pick on his part. And then the architect, of course, has consultants. Now, the information you're asking is being prepared by people that are hired by the architects. And I don't think that's objective. Turner is the only objective information you've had. And they're trying to discount that. Whatever they have said does not apply to the rebuild option also would not apply to their new build option. Think about that. They've tried to incinerate the rebuild cost estimates and yet hold up the other ones as being perfectly fine. So I think you need to be skeptical, not cynical. Second thing is, nobody's talked about when you crush up all that concrete and you drop that lime onto the ground, there's a huge groundwater problem that's going to flush right into the Willamette. That's an amazing environmental disaster. How are they going to mitigate that? There's going to be a lot of air pollution grinding up hundreds of tons of that material also. And as far as 100,000 square feet of office space to be built in the future, only if Phil Knight funds it. I don't think you can really realistically expect the citizens of Eugene to build a 100,000 square foot building when you're going to have a hard time having them swallow $15 million of a new building unless you can present very strong information that it makes a lot more sense than a rebuild. Thank you.
Sarah Huka is next, followed by Otto Patisha.
Is this on? Yeah. Hi, my name is Sarah Huka. I live in Dexter. I'm on the board of the Lane County Farmers Market. Thank you all for being here and listening to all of us. The Farmers Market just wants to maintain our vision for growing the community. We recognize there are differing views around how to best move forward with City Hall. The Lane County Farmers Market has a vision of staying on its historical site and expanding. To realize this dream, there will need to be a site other than the butterfly lot for a new courthouse. The current proposal of a new courthouse taking part of the current City Hall block allows us to realize this dream and is a win for all of us. The Farmers Market has wanted to expand for over a decade. We believe it's time to make decisions and move forward. We'd like to add to the record the voice of another 200 concerned citizens who have signed a letter of support of our views. I submitted that. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you. Otto Patisha is next, followed by Ward Beck.
Good evening. Otto Patisha, 1820 Kona Street, Eugene. I've made a mess of my notes because I listened intently to what went on during your work session. I must tell you that one person tonight came to me and said, Otto, you're going to lose this argument. I want to be really clear. This is not anything personal. personal between you or you. I think you've hired a great design team. I have no question that they will do an incredible job. We have never criticized what they have done or what they have said. So after the presentation tonight, I guess I can say I am sold. I'm sold on undocumented information and a vision, and I think that's okay. But I do think we need documentation. My fortune teller hat, and I've been wrong once in a while, says there will be no swap. The council has not voted for demolition. I don't believe you should ever destroy what you have until you have bids. Those are the real costs. The estimates are a little different than that. They're educated guesses. I don't believe there is any prospect for a consolidated city hall with the current track we're on. I was interested in the discussion about real estate and that we are using that site in a very extravagant way. I actually believe that's the design of that building. City halls, city buildings, special places should be extravagant. It has nothing to do with the materials you put on it or the makeup or the plastic surgery that you do. I think nowhere in the world would anybody ever build a one-story building that takes a full square block and call it a public building. That is so special. You will never see that building ever replicated anywhere else in the world. That makes it special. Building a four-story building, no matter what the entry is like, no matter what it's like, it's in the current vernacular of buildings. So I think being extravagant, not being a developer, not taking the developer's attitude about how you make buildings, I think is brilliant. And we did it in '64. We were probably dumb then, but we did it in '64. Now we can do it now. I think the issue, as you listen to it, gets down to how you're going to examine the goals. We saw the slide with the goals. You may have to change those. You may have to find out how you can prioritize those. The design team thinks is a better design for energy, accessibility, and welcoming because they were told to do that. Compared with the...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ward Beck is next, followed by Bob Hart.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Ward Beck, and I reside in Councilor Clark's ward. You already all know my position. I don't understand why we're going to spend $15 to $25 million more for building new when we can have basically building new in two phases, and we basically can have the same square footage plus parking plus storage all in one phase. I just don't really get that. Changing subjects a little, Otto, who was just up here, Potisha, and Bill Sider are fellows of the American Institute of Architects. The University of Oregon has 6 members of the National Academy of Science. If some or all of these prestigious scientists were here talking and making recommendations about global warming or climate change or sustainability, you would all correctly listen. Eugene has 2 equally prestigious architect fellows, 2, Bill and Otto. Their input seems to be falling mostly on deaf ears. I don't get that. Changing topics somewhat, I went to the Planning Commission last week on the subject of demolishing public buildings 50 years or older. They told me the City Council sets their work topics. I am now requesting that the City Council instruct the Planning Commission and the planning staff to write an ordinance on demolition of historic structures. At a minimum, this ordinance should allow public debate for and against demolition and require a City Council vote to confirm demolition. We don't want any more Friday afternoon over-the-counter demolition permits destroying our history. Here's a partial list of 50-year-old buildings that could disappear in coming years. The old post office, the old federal courthouse, the old Eugene High School, numerous buildings on the fairgrounds, County Public Service Building, downtown train station, MacArthur Court, the Hayward East Grandstands, and of course Civic Stadium and City Hall. please start the process towards the ordinance. On the subject of City Hall, I have been able to establish one date that relates in any sense of urgency in demolishing City Hall. It is an unspoken elephant in the room. The mayor has said to several citizens that she wants a new building completed so she can officiate at the opening before her term ends in January of 2017. There appears to be no other solid dates demanding action now. I do not think that's a good enough reason to destroy part of our history without more public process. Thank you.
Bob Hart is next, followed by Sue Saralupe.
Bob Hart. I'm in Betty Taylor's ward, Executive Director for Lane County Historical Society. Occasionally I'm asked to comment on things historical, and I've been asked to do so this evening. And I'd actually like to follow Ward Beck's comments up, or at least a section of Ward's comments up, with some curiosity on my part as to the fact that we have a very underused volunteer board in the city called the Historic Review Board. And they don't seem to have had a voice in all this discussion having to do with what is obviously a historic building. And I'm really confused as to what their purpose is if they cannot weigh in on what we're talking about, one of the considerations being demolition. So this weighs in on what Ward was talking about in lack of process having to do with historic public buildings. Thank you.
Sue Saralupe is next, followed by Barb Prentice.
Hello, my name is Sue Saralupe. I've been living in George Brown's ward for over 20 years. I am also the clinic manager for Occupy Medical. Last time I was here, I gave a brief update on life in the clinic. We were having a brief lull in our patient load. This Sunday, our numbers increased by about 20%. We are seeing more children, particularly infants. Last time I was here, I mentioned enterovirus EVD68 that was, at that time, still a few states away and was causing serious problems for children and patients with asthma. Here I am, 2 weeks later, and this virus, for which there is no vaccine, has confirmed cases in California, Idaho, and Washington. Believe me when I say that Oregon will be next, since asthma rates for children in Eugene average about 10%. According to the 2013 study from OSU, citizens have every right to be concerned. Our clinic serves a segment of the population that is often ignored. Health issues become more grave and are harder to control the longer they are ignored. Many of our people lack the basics for good health. They don't have good food. They don't have heat. Most of the time, they don't even have dry socks. They are extremely vulnerable. We are soliciting donations for respiratory infection control kits to be passed out at the clinic. These kits include masks, cough medicine, tissues, vitamins, herbal supplements, hand sanitizer, soap, and information on disease control. We are reminding people to wash their hands properly and disinfect all surfaces. Stay away from those that are ill. Although there are a few bumps to iron out in the paid sick day ordinance here in Eugene, this is one of the changes that will make a difference for public health, and I applaud you for endorsing it. Our population is growing. We have more people collected in denser spaces, facing uncertain economic times and struggling to survive on less. One way that you can help us is to open another rest stop for the unhoused so that people can maintain and recover from illness. Please remember that a roof is good medicine. EVD 68 is not the only disease we will be battling this winter. It behooves us all as community to build a climate in which all citizens can maintain good health, children and the elderly, women and men, housed and unhoused, rich and poor. If we work together wisely, we can make it through another winter and be better for it. Thank you for your support.
Barbara Prentice is next, followed by Brent McLean.
Good evening. I'm Barb Prentice, and I live in Greg Evans Ward. The Register Guard reported on September 14th that Eugene City prosecutors dismissed trespassing charges against 11 people arrested on April 1st for staging a sit-in protest in City Manager John Ruiz's office. The protest was requesting that Mr. Ruiz meet with Whoville supporters, which he declined to do. I was a legal observer at that protest and can report that the EPD acted respectfully and professionally. City Attorney Susan Treem, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, issued a statement explaining the decision to dismiss. In part, she expressed it as the city's desire to work collaboratively with community members. She also said, and I quote, "Furthermore, the city's limited resources would be better spent addressing housing solutions for the coming winter season than paying for court-appointed attorney fees, prosecution resources, court expenses." I couldn't agree more, and eagerly await the news of how much these resources might be and how the city will work collaboratively to allocate them. Winter is coming, and we need to come up with solutions now. On a slightly different note, although the EPD was respectful and professional in its interactions with the 11 mostly housed, tax-paying citizens, it is not the treatment that our homeless citizens have been receiving. One of my friends says that homeless people feel they are living in a reign of terror regarding violations of park rules. Evidently, in the past several weeks, any offense entails a 30-day ban from all public parks. 2 citations result in a 3-month exclusion, and 3 citations lead to a 1-year ban. Since there's no hearing on this or due process, it feels like a return to the downtown exclusion zone and to the criminalization of homelessness. Is there an ordinance that spells this out, or is this a newly adopted policy? I'd appreciate if councilors would check this out. Thank you.
Brent McLean is next, followed by Tyson Stuber.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor Piercy. My name is Brent McLean. I live off North Delta Highway. In my other life, I have an extensive background in commercial and industrial construction, primarily in concrete and masonry work. Spent 35 years in this city, building a lot of different things. I've always sided on building new, functional buildings. 2 weeks ago, I only considered tearing down the existing structure of the City Hall until a friend asked me to stop by and take a look at it. The bones of that structure might not meet codes for fire and police, but they sure would work for office space. Existing structures generally can be insulated and glazed, retrofitted to meet today's standards. All involved should keep an open mind to the very sound existing framework that sits there today. Please weigh heavily on affordability. Thank you.
Tyson Stuber is next, followed by Aaron Driscoll.
Good evening, council members and citizens. My name is Tyson Stuber. I reside at 4 Oaks Grange Road in Eugene. I'm here tonight as a concerned taxpayer, and I'd like to offer some professional advice as I've currently involved in all aspects of commercial building, and in the past I've built custom homes and remodeled. Oftentimes when you deal with a remodel, you have to weigh the good and the bad, and at the end of the day, you hope to make what makes good business sense. And oftentimes with remodeling, you're tasked with an emotional decision from the client or the customer, and you're constantly battling. In the perfect scenario, it's a win-win situation. You get to preserve a historical building in this case, and it makes good business sense. I don't believe that's the case here with this building. On one hand, you got a building that you're going to change the structure, you're going to change the architectural, you're going to change the layout, and you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, is this still the same building that we're trying to preserve? Have we changed it so much that it doesn't even make sense of what we're doing? Now, on the other hand, you have what makes, and that to me is an emotional decision. What makes good business sense is you tear it down, you start new. You have a building that is structurally sound and safe. You have a building that's architecturally pleasing to the public, and it's user-friendly. It's got a different layout. The people that work there are able to use the building for what it's intended for, and the people that visit the building, which is the public in this case, can use it as well. Hopefully, I've given you some things to think about, but like I said, at the end of the day, an emotional decision is not the way to go. You got to do something that makes good business sense. Thank you.
Aaron Driscoll is next, followed by Jeff Harms.
Hi, my name's Erin Driscoll, and I reside at 1944 Washington Street in Eugene. First of all, I just want to say how impressed I am with the outpouring of support from professionals, the architectural community, and native Eugenians, with no motive other than to do the right thing and save our building. And pardon me, city councilors, but nothing makes sense about the new city hall, building a new city hall, and it's frustrating to me. There's the cost. I live in Green Eugene. I believe in reduce, recycle, reuse. And there's a lot of talk about Civic Stadium, and I don't feel that this has really been talked about a lot to the public. I think there's been more information about Civic Stadium than our own City Hall. And I don't really care where City Hall is, as long as we keep it downtown. I think where it is right now is a great location. It's right across from the Lane County building. But I do want us to save our building. And otherwise, I'd like to see it put to a vote before the people, the community, and let us vote on our money. Thank you.
Jeff Harms is next, followed by Thomas Price.
Good evening, Mayor, councilors. My name is Jeff Harms. I'm a resident of Springfield. I come to you as a member of Carpenters Local 271 here in Eugene, Oregon. I'm the financial secretary there and speak for those members. First of all, I speak in favor of rebuilding the City Hall. When balancing cost efficiency with historical preservation, with efficiency and usefulness, I believe it is more cost efficient to create a building that will meet the needs of the city above and beyond what the current building can provide. Being in the construction industry, I think it's well known that when you go into a remodel, the hidden costs are often substantial. When you can create a new building with the energy efficiency that you hope for, I think it's a better route than diving into a remodel that has a lot of unknowns. The structure of the existing building, if it's not safe for police and fire, I really don't see the rationale in saying that it's safe for the public either. To remodel, I believe, is to make a commitment to not do as well as we could given the same amount of money. Thank you.
Thomas Price is next, followed by Kristen Taylor.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Councilors and neighbors. My name is Thomas Price. I am from Ward 8, past chair of Churchill area twice over, as well as the past president of Chris Pryor's Homeowners Association. I am here as an environmental safety engineer. I've heard tonight misquoted many environmental issues by engineers or architects who don't have the expertise. I am here also for Cascadia Green Building Council, which has also been misused or misquoted. I am a steering committee member. I am here with Christine Taylor, Taylor as representatives of the Eugene Branch Collaborative of the International Living Future Institute, a parent organization for the Cascadia Building Council, a chapter of both the United States and Canada Green Building Councils that serve Alaska, British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon. The Eugene Branch Collaborative's mission is to generate momentum towards a sustainable built environment by facilitating education, fostering connections, and celebrating our community. The Branch Collaborative is composed of green building professionals, advocates for the greater Eugene and Springfield area. Cascadia's Branch Collaborative supports our discussion, your decision on the proposed new City Hall project to raise the bar for sustainability and encourages you to continue to raise the bar higher in remaining phases. We encourage you to move forward with your approved direction to build this new City Hall and for our community. Next, Kristen Taylor will provide additional testimony on behalf of the Cascadia Eugene Branch Collaborative.
Kristen Taylor is next, followed by Michael Kerrigan.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Councilors and neighbors. My name is Kristen Taylor. I live at 1648 East 23rd Avenue. I'm in Ward 3. Here's some As noted in the Register Guard yesterday, the future of City Hall is not a new discussion for our community. It has been under debate and consideration for 16 years. Here are some details that I hope will emphasize the process around the current City Hall project. As you know, City Council direction was given in April 2001 to develop a plan for City Hall. Since 2009, there have been about 22 meetings of the full council, including 2 supplemental budget approvals, plus 5 additional meetings by the City Council Subcommittee on City Hall. It's also worth mentioning the 3-year master planning and site selection process completed by THA Architecture, with a very extensive public involvement process completed before 2009, which included many more meetings than those noted above. The city's chosen design team have been working with the council-approved project scope, budget, and values to bring forward a relevant recommendation since July 2013. In addition to 4 council meetings, they met with the city's project team dozens of times, and they presented the project to about 30 stakeholder groups and 2 open house events. Since last fall, through an integrated design process, the design team has been working collaboratively with the project team to achieve the 5 city council approved values. It is my understanding that the team studied a broad range of 8 initial options, from reuse focus to new construction, retaining the council chamber. After months of evaluation and slowly narrowing down the options to the one that best met the City Council's approved values and goals, the design team presented a recommendation to Council to build new and establish a new framework for future consolidation development on the block that allows for a 300 to 400% more intensive use of this urban area. You confirmed the direction in February and again in July, after the team revised the block framework and building design to accommodate the courthouse, farmers market, and land exchange. Cascadia supports your approved goals and values, and the current building design proposed increased density in our downtown center, greater energy efficiency, greater building use flexibility, and improve access and use by the public. We encourage you to move forward with your approved direct path to build this important civic building, a new city hall for our community. We support your decision on this current project to raise the bar for sustainability and encourage you to continue to raise the bar higher in the remaining phases. Thank you.
Michael Kerrigan is next, followed by Howard Davis.
My name is Michael Kerrigan. I'm a proud resident of Ward 7. I'm the Program Director at Community Alliance of Lane County, or CALC, though tonight I'll be speaking as a steering committee member of the Nightingale Health Sanctuary. As you all know, the Nightingale Health Sanctuary Steering Committee unanimously agreed to withdraw its request for a rest stop or car camp to establish our health sanctuary at the North Polk and Railroad Ave site. We remain optimistic about the project, and we are seeking another location to establish our sanctuary. The need for more rest stops like Opportunity Village Eugene, the community supported shelter Safe Spots remains so great. We need help to find another site to purchase for our sanctuary. City staff have graciously agreed to help us, thank you, John, to find another site, but we need your help as well. The more eyes and the more ears that we have, the quicker we're going to find a site. The sites can be private land or also city, county, school district, or state land. In the Portland area, the city of Portland has reached out to all the government agencies there, to private landowners, seeking a comprehensive effort to find a site for sites for the homeless there. We need the same comprehensive effort here in Eugene. Winter is coming sooner than later. The weather is changing tonight. I was riding my bike down here, so we need to act now. And so we look forward to hearing any tips about a location for us. And as always, we look forward to working with you in the months and years ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Howard Davis is next, followed by Aaliyah Hall.
Thanks. I'm Howard Davis. I live in Councilor Zelenka's ward. I'm also the former director of the Historic Preservation Program at the University of Oregon. The city should go ahead with the plan for the new city hall. I say this for 3 reasons. First, according to yesterday's Register Guard, it's been 16 years since the idea of a new city hall has been discussed. We can move forward now or bring the whole thing to a halt again and spend another 5 years talking and 5 years after that planning. In fact, we can bring the process to an even quarter century without too much trouble. Now, why is that a problem? Well, one reason is that in those subsequent 10 years, construction prices are not going down, they're going up. And it's well known that it's much more difficult to predict construction costs for renovations than it is for new construction. So those costs will go up even more than we can imagine. And third, the people advocating saving the old building talk about its architectural importance. The building is indeed a great representative of an era when architecture catered to the automobile rather than the pedestrian, an era when it seemed as if there was an endless supply of energy for heating and cooling, an era when the words global warming might have referred to a day at the beach, and an era that fortunately is over. But even those advocates are now agreeing with the consultants and talking about renovations to the building that would completely destroy its historic significance. I think this would be true even if the building was simply brought up to current code, not to mention any loftier sustainability goals. The design that's now underway represents a forward-looking vision for this city. It incorporates the most advanced thinking and energy efficiency, and it's on the verge of realization. Let's put an end to the squabbling, an end to the obstructionism, an end to the 16 years of delay. Let's build it once and for all.
Aaliyah Hall is next, followed by Jenny Young.
Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Aaliyah Hall and I live at 1692 Jefferson, and Councilor Brown, you are my elected representative. I'm speaking to you tonight to remind you that it will be my generation that gets to bear either the brunt or the fruit of your decisions over the next few days. I'm asking you to keep that in mind, even as you consider throwing away the investment that the city of Eugene, or citizens of Eugene, made in the former City Hall just 50 years ago. Please consider asking your design professionals to take another look at how Eugene could truly be a green leader in reusing our City Hall. If private businesses such as McMinimans can make a viable business model out of reusing old buildings, then certainly it would seem that the city could do the same. Thank you for your time and consideration in this matter.
Jenny Young is next, followed by Veronica Janssen.
I'm Jenny Young. I live at 1062 East 21st Avenue in Eugene. I'm an Oregon architect and a professor of
Move a little closer to the mic, Jen. Thank you.
Do you want me to start over? I'm an Oregon architect and a professor of architecture at the University of Oregon. And I would urge you to continue to move forward with the approved plan for this new small city hall. I've followed the multi-year process. I've looked at all those, I've been following those options, including the one to reuse the existing council chamber and repurpose the concrete structure. Designs using those part of the building have always been flawed, and I am convinced they would be very costly. Your team has been responsive, comprehensive, and informed in developing alternatives and different design proposals. The current approved design, I think, will result in a city hall that is accessible and is welcoming and will be an incremental step toward improving the vitality of downtown. After so many years of process and so much investment in planning and design, I think derailing the project now will rob all of us citizens of Eugene of a new civic heart and a continuing improvement of our downtown. I think that derailing the project now will result, maybe that a city hall will not be built at all. If it will be built, it will cost much more with years of inflation added to that, and it will be well, it's really questionable whether it will be built at all if it's stopped now, I think. I think it's time to take a step forward that will increase the quality of the downtown and give us a place to gather and move on with city business. And I urge you to follow your original approved proposal now.
Jenny Young is next, followed by Veronica Johnson. Is that Jenny? Did I?
That was Jenny Young.
That was Jenny, sorry. All right, so it's Veronica. Next is George Braddock.
My name is Veronica Johnson. I'm a student at the University of Oregon and have lived here for 4 years. And in those 4 years, I've come to understand Eugene's identity as very forward-thinking. And while I represent a transient population, I'd also like to see that population more involved in understanding of its civic environment. And I think that having a very open, accessible city hall, which is also engaged in its urban environment, is a way for students to really feel a part of Eugene in its inner circle, in its government and process. And that is kind of what I would like to say from that position.
Thank you. George Braddock is next, followed by Donald Driscoll.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is George Braddock, and I'd like to encourage, I live at 910 Coburg Road, Eugene, Oregon. I would like to encourage this council to move forward with a new design of City Hall. My comments tonight are based on one of the goals, which was accessibility, and springing from your comments, Mayor Piercy, about the importance of that in our city. The City Hall needs to send a message that everyone is welcome and their participation in gifts valued. The building itself needs to set a standard for enhanced accessibility, efficiency, and civic inclusion in what goes on there. After years of declining populations, cities are experiencing a new renaissance. More people are moving back in and filling up downtowns. Lively, walkable streets are in demand and being used in new ways. This calls for a city hall when it is part of a more vibrant and animated public realm. City Hall doesn't just need glasses, hearing aids, or press door, as some say the Hall proponents have suggested. It needs a transplant. A transplant that recognizes and embraces the changes that have happened in the past 50 years, changes that were unimaginable when City Hall was built in 1964. Our City Hall needs a transplant in order to give it a more meaningful life in the context of today's expectations of accessibility, efficiency, and welcomeness in public buildings and spaces. Landmark legislation such as the 1990s Americans with Disability Acts and other subsequent laws guaranteed the rights of people with disabilities to equal access to public education, public buildings, and services. Yes, with ramps and elevators, you can improve its accessibilities in a very limited way. True accessibility enables full enjoyment and equality of access for everyone. This means coming in the front door and beyond the physical accessibility to inclusion of our citizens in all with intellectual, cognitive disabilities, including brain injuries and mental illness. Nothing draws you to City Hall today but the need to do business there. Sadly, as often as not, a City Hall is unpleasant. Setting 5 feet above the street level, it does not invite interaction, commerce, or community. The physical reality cannot be remodeled away. No one should have to push their way up 60 feet of ramp or be directed around the back to a garage in an elevator. I want what the ADA promised to everyone: physical access and full enjoyment of all public buildings, public services, and public spaces. 10,000 seniors retire every day. Many are redefining old stereotypes of quiet disengagement. Rather, they are beginning new careers, volunteering in greater numbers than ever in our community. Living longer, more people are experiencing the challenges of growing older. Mobility, sensory capacity, and cognitive impairments are common to aging people. Let's get rid of the barriers that would limit their participation. I want the people in Eugene 50 years from now to say that this City Council demanded a City Hall that is barrier-free, welcomes everyone, and meets people where they live, on the city streets and on the sidewalks. A new City Hall can be a national model of smart construction and state-of-the-art energy efficiency, and green building to modern seismic design and inclusive-centered design. A remodel can never achieve these high-level standards.
Thank you. Donald Driscoll is next, followed by Anita Van Aspert.
Mayor Piercy, members of the City Council, my name is Donald B. Driscoll. I'm an architect and community planner. City staff stated to the press that the reconsideration time for consideration of the relative merits of the new City Hall in comparison to rehabilitation of the existing City Hall is costing tens of thousands of dollars. This is probably an exaggeration, but it does infer that we're wasting your time and money. On the other hand, the city has spent $2 million on a proposed new City Hall study, $8.68 million on fire department relocation, $17.2 million on the police department's relocation. The city will spend approximately $1 million for demolition of the existing City Hall. That's less money than it would take to upgrade the seismic protection of the existing City Hall. In addition, the city will continue to spend $1.2 million on rental space while building an undersized City Hall startup. The largest cost, though, by far, is the proposed final cost for a new City Hall. Based on the city architect's numbers for the proposed new City Hall, we're spending $11 million for the proposed Phase 1 construction, $4 million in support costs and demolition of the existing City Hall, $3 million for an additional fourth floor of the proposed startup new City Hall, $44 million for 100,000 square feet of proposed Phase 2 addition based on today's proposed Phase 1 cost of $440 a square foot. This is a total of $62 million for a proposed completed new City Hall. Any accounting of the cost of any of several rehabilitation options demonstrates that renovation of the existing City Hall can accomplish the city's needs for far less money and provide more than 3 times the available space of the Phase 1 proposal. However, first and foremost, this is our City Hall. And expenditures of this magnitude, I think, should require a vote of Eugene citizens. It would be an outrage if our citizens were not given the opportunity for a vote on expenditures of this magnitude. Thank you very much.
Anita Van Aspert is next, followed by Donald Corner.
Hello, I'm Anita Van Aspert, and I'm in Betty Taylor's district. I live on 1754 Moon Shadow Lane. I'm a landscape architect. Full disclosure, very early on in the process, when all the options were still on the table, I was hired for 3.5 hours to consult with Royal Broca, which I can assure you has not clouded my opinion today. I've been reading up. I really didn't follow that much after those initial 3.5 hours what was going on with City Hall. So I've been reading up in the Register Guard, Eugene Weekly. I've listened to Otto, and I've listened to other people, what they had to say. And I am just slightly leaning towards the new City Hall. And why? Basically, your own process and your own decisions that you have made in the past as the City Council. Listening to you, I've heard, I think the city manager said that you voted to build on the current site. You voted for that. So with that, you've basically put yourself on this path because you will have a complete new City Hall no matter what, because the goals that you set out will completely change the current structure. Whether you raise it, build a new structure, or whether you, like somebody said, essentially build a new building around the existing skeleton. It doesn't matter. You're going to have a completely new City Hall. I do believe in the creativity of all our architects here in town, that you can do that by remodeling, or you can do that by raising and putting up a new building. So if you do not choose for the new City Hall the path that you are on, because that's where you are on right now anyway, you're going to backtrack on all the design decision, have to spend all that money again in architecture and engineering fees that you already spent. So I say, let's just move on now, because I really question, why are you doing this now? You've already started demolition, and now you're asking these value questions? Mark said, like, I'm asking these questions about value. Do we want to keep the existing building, or do we not want to keep the existing building? You've closed that off, and you said, we're going to do this on the existing site. So, let me see, where am I? I'm a little upset about this, your own process. It's a democracy, and I was hoping my city council to be a little bit more professional. So, if you decide not to do a new building, then, and if you decide to keep the current City Hall, that means that you have to look at what can be in this. Sorry, I've said enough.
Donald Corner is next, followed by Michael Fifield. Donald Corner.
Going once.
Okay. Michael Fifield. Followed by Joe Velasic.
Thank you. Michael Fifield. I reside at 2660 Cresta de Ruta in Eugene. I'm an architect and a planner, professor of architecture at the U of O, former department head, former past president of the local AIA chapter, and current chair of the AIA's Design Excellence Committee. Most of the discussion that I've read in the newspaper and also tonight has been about the building itself, and it's been addressing issues of sustainability, cost, structure. I think those are all important issues, but those are not primary issues. Those are all issues that really would be important in any building that you ever do. A primary issue is, what is the essence of this project? And the essence is, what does a city hall for the city of Eugene really want to be? I would argue that the existing city hall does not meet the standards that you would want to have today. It is not a welcoming building. It is up on a plinth. It's basically a destination building. In 2011, the City of Eugene contracted with the AIA to develop a study on using design principles for the new City Hall. This is a 21-page report dated September 7th, 2011, that has a series of urban design principles in it. The current proposed new building that's being proposed meets all of those standards. The existing building does not. And I would argue that if you go ahead and try to save the existing one, to bring it up to the standards to meet those goals that the city has established, as well as the goals that are in this report, you're going to change the building so considerably that you're not going to be retaining it. If you retain the basic idea of the building as it is not meeting the goals that you want. The U.S. General Services Administration has a design excellence program that they started 15 or 20 years ago. And at that time, they hired 70 peer reviewers. I am still one of those original peer reviewers. It is my estimation that if this City Hall today as it's designed in the current building were brought before us, it would not meet the standards. It would not even meet the basic standards of what a City Hall would be in this current environment. Therefore, I would recommend that you should go ahead and really spend most of your time addressing the issues that the new City Hall is proposing and making sure that those goals are being achieved. I might also mention that Scott Wolf is also a fellow of the AIA, one of your consultants, as am I. So thank you.
Joe Vlasic is next, followed by Dennis Cassidy.
Evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I'd like to thank you all for your dedicated service. You do a wonderful job at what you do. In this case, I feel that the symbology of a city hall is extremely important. After World War II and going through one of the most wrenching experiences a country could, Germany spent millions of dollars to cover their Reichstag building, their preeminent governmental building with a transparent dome. And the message behind this was that government should always be transparent, and that it was hiding behind walls that let the problems happen that did happen in Germany. This City Hall, I don't know how many people here who are advocating for saving it are driving cars from 1965. But there's probably a good reason that they don't. They're not energy efficient. They're from a different era where government was trusted, energy was not a consideration. I feel that this, Eugene, in order to move forward into this period that we're entering now, where more than ever we have to win back, the governmental institutions have to win back the trust of the people in order to meet the challenges that are coming, that are going to be directly symbolized by the shape of this new building and the energy efficiency of a new building. A welcoming, open, and energy efficient building is what this very caring, very intelligent group of people you've hired to do have come up with. And I think we should support them and support you and follow through on what you've begun. Thanks very much.
Dennis Cassidy is next, followed by Don Bischoff.
My name is Dennis Cassidy, Post Office Box 5028, Eugene 97405. In regards to City Hall, it bothers me that the initial instructions, excuse me, Mayor, Councilor, City Manager, it bothers me that the initial instructions were to save the council chambers, which is the heart of City Hall, the artwork, and the parking structure, or parking in the structure. And now, for some reason, it seems that everything has gone sideways and morphed into a complete demolition. That is not sustainability. Everyone needs to realize that we'll get more square footage for much less money by the renovation of City Hall than we would get if we were to tear it down and build new. Phase 1 does not bring back the scattered city departments. Where does the city expect to get the money for Phase 2? At this point, I don't believe the city has a plan. It may be pretty difficult in the future to get the citizens to vote for a Phase 2 after seeing what they get in a Phase 1. How can we say that we're green and reducing our carbon footprint if we continue to tear down our buildings? I have a building in downtown Eugene that's 103 years old. Our older buildings have immeasurable value. It would speak volumes of our values. It would speak volumes to our values of sustainability if we were to renovate City Hall. I'd like to ask those in attendance here tonight that support the saving and renovating the existing City Hall, please show by raising your hands. Thank you.
Don Bischoff is next, followed by Ray Wiley.
Hi, Don Bischoff, 1632 Bradley Drive, and Councilor Mike Clark's ward. I'm like Otto. My notes are all scrambled now based on what I heard here earlier in the work session. I would just say that our Save City Hall proposal is based solidly on the Turner Construction Company estimates, upgraded for inflation, and that no matter how the architects you've heard tonight try to wish it away, they haven't presented you with any figures to show. They just made wild guesses. Well, it's going to cost 35% more than Turner estimates. And in the meantime, the architect's representative, Karen Knutson, has dished out invective in yesterday's Register Guard. I quote, "The conclusions reached by the Save City Hall group are based on conjecture and assumptions that a professional tasked with completing this project could never seriously make," she said. "They are not accountable to the community or the city for this project, and they have shown little care for accurately informing the public about the work and its complexity." Wow. So our group, which includes 8 professional architects, is unprofessional and has shown little care for accurately informing the public. But what has Ms. Knutson's firm given you? So far, but conjecture. Have you seen any firm figures from them, from that organization, based on something as solid as the Turner estimates? Has the firm told you exactly what its estimates are? I didn't hear anything in the hour-and-a-half presentation today. I question who's being unprofessional here. So, thanks to the motion you passed, the council, the interior renovation work can proceed without any delay, which gives lie to the city manager's estimate that this was costing tens of thousands of dollars for the delay. All that work can continue. I think the possibility of saving the taxpayers of Eugene at least $12 million or more on the Phase 1 and Phase 2 means that you have a fiscal duty to demand another look. And I think trying to do it in a day and a half is foolish. I think you're not going to get good figures from anybody. You don't give Turner a real chance to respond to the request that they provide figures. You've got time. Take a little more time. Get a professional estimate outside of the architects and outside of Turner's. Let a professional with the gravitas of Turner make the estimate and tell you what the real figures are. Thank you.
Ray Wiley is next, followed by Eric Hall.
Madam Mayor and City Council, my name is Ray Wiley, and I'm a retired registered architect and engineer. My thoughts on the City Hall go back to March of 1961, when I first got involved with this very unique design. I considered then, and I still consider, it one of the best designed city halls in the nation. For that reason, I believe it should be
renovated as close as possible back to its original design, while improving its seismic strength to code, HVAC systems, multiple glazings, and super insulated walls, insulated floors and roofs. I believe this could be all done for less than what has been estimated. This building should be placed on the National Register of Historic Places. If this was accomplished, it would be a great tourist draw. Other renovated historic buildings in Eugene, like the Oregon Electric Station, the Fifth Street Public Market, the SMJ House, the Shed Institute, the McDonald Theater, the Smead Hotel, and the Wow Hall bring people from all over the West to our fair city. Also, I'm convinced the biggest hazard Eugene buildings face is not earthquakes, but floods. I believe that in the next 20 years, downtown Eugene will experience a monumental flood similar to what Phoenix experienced last week. Our dams will not protect us from these record one-day rainfall, which could cause the Amazon to go 4 feet over its banks. The first floor of every public building in Eugene should be at least 5 feet above grade. I understand if this building is demolished, that the plan is to use 90 to 95% of the crushed concrete as site fill.
Thank you.
It's toxic.
Eric Hall is next, followed by Sarah Bennett.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. My name is Eric Hall, and my architectural business is located at 116 Highway 99. Architects can respectfully disagree on matters of design, methods of delivering services, and yes, even budget estimates. But while we can all have differing views on these things, what we can't disagree on is matters of fact. So it was troubling when the Register Guard quoted the city's architect, wherein they made the following statements regarding the Turner estimate. The folks which provided cost estimating services to both architectural teams charged with reviewing the options for the City Hall. According to Karen Knutson with Raul Brokaw and others as they've testified tonight, the Turner estimate is, quote, missing a number of necessary and significant costs, including $1 million for design, structural upgrades needed for a renovation, a highly efficient heating and cooling system, and more than $1 million for an increase in construction costs compared to 3 years ago. With respect to the required structural upgrades, I would ask the firm to once again review page 24 of the Turner estimate, where a whole section of the estimate is dedicated to the cost of these structural upgrades. They were included. With respect to the claim that there isn't a high-efficiency heating and cooling system, I would direct you to look at page 25 for the council chamber, page 28 for the new occupied space, and page 27 for the shelled space, for those costs were also included in the estimate. And finally, the two red herrings. The first is the notion of architectural fees, which were never included in the $11 million estimate for either proposal, and are still not included today. That's why you have a hard cost of $11 million and another soft cost of $4 million. And second, the issue that more than $1 million in escalation in construction costs were not included. Specifically, page 30 of the Turner estimates delineates 2.25% per year for 2 years for a total increase of 4.5%. Now, you've heard direct testimony tonight that there were no construction escalation costs. I'm wondering to what extent the design team really reviewed those estimates. Finally, there is no question that the existing City Hall has problems. We acknowledge that. I think there's few that would question that. But there's a difference between problems and things that can't be solved. And the city has a tremendously talented design team in place. I, for one, would really like to see what they could do to solve those problems. Thank you.
Sarah Bennett is next, followed by Carl Eisenbach.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Bennett, 980 Willamette Street. Currently, I serve as president of the Downtown Eugene Incorporated Board of Directors, which represents 125 property owners within the Downtown Services District. The DEI board last week, unanimously supported the building of a new city hall. Individually, I can speak from experience, having been involved in a 100,000 square foot renovation downtown, that the challenge with renovations is really just to get the work done. Once you replace the systems, you meet all the code requirements, you're still dealing with the existing footprint, and you never have the end product that you really hope for. Here you have a chance to get a modern space plan with all the efficiencies that you want, a public plaza that changes the way the public interacts, and plaza that connects with the rest of downtown. And of course the opportunity to allow for a possible land swap that would give the Lane County Farmers Market a chance to expand. You've hired very thoughtful professionals to advise you, and the City Council has made a decision in the past, and DEI is hopeful that you'll take the recommendation of the people advising you and stick with that decision and move forward. Thanks very much.
Carl Eisenbach is next, followed by Marston Morgan.
Carl Eisenbach, 2415 Skyline Boulevard. A lot of the arguments, it seems to me, about totally constructing a new city hall seem to be a lot of sizzle. I don't see any steak there. You know, a lot of work has been done in terms of documenting the costs that would be entailed with taking the bones of a I-beams and, you know, the underground parking structure. And it seems to me that the primary responsibility of the City Council is the wise use of taxpayer dollars. And I have to ask if it is really a wise decision to spend $1 million to destroy a 150-car underground parking structure so that we can create a gravel parking lot. This just doesn't make any sense. Also, you know, you have the promises of land swaps, but I don't believe facilities or other people have been really honest with you about that. I know that the land swaps have been, you know, factored into your calculations, but it's my understanding that those land swaps with both the county and EWEB are basically dead on arrival. So it seems to me that, you know, the best option that you really have is to take the bones of the existing City Hall and run with it. And remember, you know, if you have the bones of the City Hall, we're not dealing with, at this point, an architectural consideration. What we are really dealing with is a structural engineering problem. And with that structural engineering problem comes the responsibility to wisely conserve taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Marston Morgan is next, followed by Jenna Fribley.
Hi, I'm Marston Morgan. I'm an architect in town, and my office is 241 East Broadway. I live out Mosby Creek, about 5 miles out of Cottage Grove, and I raise cattle, in addition to being an architect. I think the first thing I would bring to your attention is a quote from a businessman here in town that Eugene is all process and no product. And I think that that should weigh on you. All process and no product. We have a quaint kind of tradition here that somehow the process validates the product. It does not. You can have all of the focus groups, you can have all of the advisory committees, you can have all the charrettes. My God, all of the charrettes that I've been through. It does not necessarily validate what you get in the end. What you get in the end in this case is something that's really badly conceived. I don't care how many people it's gone through. You ultimately have to look at what you've got empirically. Now, we just sat through, I think probably, and I've sat through hundreds of these, probably one of the best dog and pony shows I've ever seen, ever heard for a long, long time. But you're only getting one half of the story. You really should be obligated in the interests of following the money. Look at the fiscal issue. This is the most important thing. Look at the trade-offs also that you can get in various scenarios. That hasn't happened yet. Follow the money. I think that the suggestion that you bring Turner back, I think, is a good one, although if I were Turner, I wouldn't touch this thing with a 10-foot pole. You need to get, as John Bischoff says, you need to get some objective, outside, impartial evaluation of what's going on. Otherwise, this wonderful presentation that we saw today just remains what was a wonderful presentation, the greatest dog and pony show I've ever seen. But it doesn't really get to the guts of the matter, and that is what is the fiscal impact of this thing. You've got an existing building there that has more than enough square footage to satisfy your first and second phase program, and you could do it all in one fell swoop and be done with this thing in half the time it'll take you to build a new building. Thank you very much.
Jenna Fribley is next, followed by Drix.
Hello, Mayor Piercy and City Councilors. Thank you for all of the time, energy, and attention you have given this issue. Yep. Can you hear me better now?
A little louder.
So thank you for all the time, energy, and attention you have given this issue so far. My name is Jenna Fribley, and I am a local architect. I have my own professional practice here in Eugene, and I'm also an adjunct instructor at U of O, as well as president-elect of our local chapter of the American Institute of Architects. I want to be clear that I am here today to share my own personal opinion and not as a representative of either of those organizations. However, I do believe that my viewpoint is consistent with the majority view of members of those organizations. I do recognize and appreciate the existing City Hall building as a notable work that is reflective of its place and time. However, I highly respect the design team at Raoul Brokaw Architects and the other professionals that have been involved in this process, and I believe that they have done their due diligence in fully vetting the options to reach a well-informed solution for this project. I support the project as set forth by Raoul Brokaw Architects and as previously approved by the City Council. Thank you.
Drix is next, followed by Moshe Immerman.
And now for this. Hi, Eugene. My name is Drix, and I live on High Street. I had the privilege of being in the Eugene Celebration Parade a few weeks ago, and much of you guys were in the parade, and I don't know of any other town that I can run up to you and say, look, here's where I live, high above high. And we all laughed, and that was another moment we have in town. So thank you. Speaking of, this is just great to be with all of you here. This is like a lot of brain pool in our wonderful town, and I'm just proud to add to it and be around it. I live in the U District, West University neighborhood. We call it the One. We're actually east of everybody, so it's a friendly name, but it's confusing. So we have the Wit and the One. And coming up next week is the move-in day when all the students show up. So it's kind of exciting. We're going to have a lot of new people we get to break into living in a community, which is fun. I used to get upset by it, but now I look forward to it. All the new students and all their father ganders and mother duckers all showing up in splendor in yellow and green to help build our future. I'm starting to get older myself. I decided to start growing this beard because it doesn't cost a lot, and it just reminds me that I've got a lot to offer as far as years on the planet. And a lot of what I have to offer when I show up here came from Eugene. There's just something really magic about our town. I can't put my finger on it, and there's been some fine words said about it now. And I would like to have it so that whatever we build as our city council is sort of a still reverent space, because there's a lot of great people in Eugene. I tease a lot when I say it's all about you, Gene. But that's true, except for me, a name we call myself. I just think everything in the future is going to look different, and we might as well get used to having new thoughts and new beings and new ways of dealing with the process. I don't think any of the things we're used to now we would have predicted in the future. I thought we'd have flying cars and little pills for meals, but those haven't happened yet. So I can't even read my own notes here, so I won't. But the future's coming on fast. It's going to look different. There will be some crises. Don't know what they are, but if you look at past history, there always has been a crisis. And I would like us to develop a comfortable mode of communication that we can all have before a crisis hits. Let's set it up now. We are with a meeting of City Hall, meeting with the City Council. Am I the only person that comes here for fun?
Maybe.
Am I nuts? Democracy is fun. This is fun, you guys. And so thank you very much for letting me crack open the realities. Thank you.
Okay. Moshe Immerman's next, followed by Kevin Matthews.
Good question.
You want to use the other one?
Hello, friends. Big thanks to everyone for coming here and joining the party and having a good time. Thanks to the City Council and Mayor for profound diligence, devotion, and thousands of hours of hard work. And the creative intelligence in this room tonight is just stellar, isn't it? I live in South Eugene. I've been a park ranger in 4 national parks teaching geology and ecology. I've lived through 5 earthquakes, including Loma Prieta, where I watched the gas main blow and a 150-foot tall tornado was there 40 feet from my bedroom. One of the major things I noticed, besides being centered and aware, is being connected with Mother Earth and letting the land teach you. What I noticed is nothing profoundly met the design requirements to deal with any of those earthquakes, except the deeply rooted oak trees and the rather flexible trees and the Mexicans, because they're used to disasters all the time. I used to work in the bottom of this building for 2 years on the, frankly, secret Y2K steering committee. And I was given the secret emergency operational plan for this county and asked unanimously, not to boast but be real, to prepare a civil unrest preparedness plan for the county. Shredded the documents when I was done. Brought up a few things. There's 9 to 10 major dams above Eugene. So I talked to 5 people from the U.S. Geological Survey, and they agree. Eugene could theoretically be under 25 feet of water in 35 to 45 minutes, with a wall of water 35 foot high coming down the Willamette Valley at 45 miles an hour. You need to design for that, and you can. Not to fear the future, live with delight, new thoughts, but be like Mother Nature, adapted for the future. I talked to the principal engineers and others at Dogami, Department of Geology and Mineral Industries. They're great. Yumi is a miracle of joy and intelligence. Bring them here. What they'll tell you is we live on the Pacific Rim. We get subduction zone earthquakes about every 300 years. The last one was 314 years ago, January 26, 1700. Study the works of geologist Atwell. I know we can deal with it because I've been 700 feet on the ground in an Air Force building designed to withstand this stuff. Where do we get the money to do it? Congressman DeFazio is on the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee and the Homeland Security Committee. We say, Peter, we want to build a visionary building that's a model for everything from Northern California to British Columbia, not to mention Chile and Indonesia and Alaska. Say, We want this to be a healthy pioneering model. We're in the land of pioneers. Let's do it. So let's bring in to the Silva Concert Hall our two wonderful senators, Congressman DeFazio and Congressman Blumenauer, and say, we want to be a model. We got a great architecture school here. John, our city manager, very capable man, knows we've got to look at continuity of government. This should be a
Kevin Matthews is up next,
that's visionary and fun.
followed by Michelle Billington.
Hi, I'm Kevin Matthews. Thank you for hearing us tonight. Patty and I live at Swan Farm at the end of Brown Road outside of Dexter, and I'm a property owner in Betty's ward. One of the earlier speakers brought up the Reichstag in Berlin as an example, and it's a really exciting example because it's a brilliant building, it's a world-class building, but what does it tell us about Eugene City Hall? Germany left the Reichstag building empty for generations until they figured out what to do with it. And now you have a building that has the scars of generations of European wars, plus this brilliant solution of a transparent dome on top. And in the middle of the dome is a funnel leading up above the Parliament chambers, which is open to the sky at the top, but no water comes in because hot air from the Parliament is constantly flowing up through the funnel. It's a brilliant diagram. It has a dome in the center. It's a rectangular building pointing out to the four compass points, just like the diagram of Eugene City Hall. Eugene City Hall is a profound building. If Eugene wants to do something profound, and speaking with 10 years experience as an architectural journalist, if Eugene wants to put a building on the map, the one way to do it is with a brilliant renovation. The plan that has been brought forward by the talented design team is a business as usual solution. It is also, frankly, a ripoff of the public. And you can't be honest with the public without costing phase two. Throughout the presentation, there was talking about the Turner estimate. There are two Turner estimates. The entire point of that project, fair disclosure, I can outdo Anita Van Espert. I was paid for 1 hour of consulting on Otto's team. But the entire point of that exercise was not to design a building that had exactly the number of elevators you're going to need, but to have matching programs for a renovation and a new build and look at the cost differences. And what that proved, and what won the hearts of the advisory committee, is that it's tens of millions of dollars more cost effective to renovate that building. This is why citizens don't trust government. Talking to thousands of citizens in the Churchill neighborhood and across Lane County in my campaign for the last year, I found a lot of cynicism. Respectfully, the design team, the staff, the city council, friends who support them are in a bubble. You have to set aside business as usual. You have to find actual win-win solutions. You cannot build a green building with an 84,000 square foot tear down. Can't do it.
Michelle? Karen Daly? Was Michelle coming? Okay, sorry. Okay, Michelle. Billington, I believe.
Hi, my name is Michelle Billington. I live at 255 High Street, number 107, the Parkview Terrace in Eugene. I'd just like to speak about about the current stuff, like the building, the City Hall building. My dad was a builder of a lot of the things in Eugene in the 60s and 70s. His name was Jack Billington. He was a designer and builder of the roads and all of that. Some of the design of a lot of the from here to California and down to Texas, the I-5, the Beltline building, the Beltline road, all of that. I would like to tell you that building the building like that just with a lot of glass and it's not going to be good. Maybe tearing this down and rebuilding a good one, a good sound structure, because our old buildings are going to get old, have gotten old. Our buildings have gotten old. I love our building, our current City Hall, and my dad loved it a lot. But I don't think taking down a lot of this wonderful stuff on it. There's a lot of the whole building, the whole thing, this area and the other area. It's a beautiful area. It should be designed a little bit better for handicap accessible. Just like a lot of buildings, I have to move, and I can't find a building that has a lot of ramps, and so then all the buildings are filling up pretty soon. But I just want to say I love this building. My dad worked in it for a long time, different times of his life. He worked on the one down on Roosevelt and the one in Springfield. He worked the one by Delta Ponds, or the Delta Sand and Gravel. I love Oregon. I'm a native Oregonian, and I think that we should build buildings that are sound and good, and and practical. And also, I think that I think we're overestimating that kind of stuff. You're overestimating how much it's going to cost. I think that some of the money should be better spent on things like apartments and houses for affordable housing. I think that rent-controlled housing has not been brought up, and it should be. Again, by Peter de Fazio and all the rest of them, I wrote about 10 years ago, we don't need any more wars. We need to focus our money on things like housing, helping our people, rebuilding after things have gone to pot, all this. And I think that's what I'm about.
Karen Daly is next, followed by Scott Bartlett.
Hi, I'm Karen Daly, and hello to all of you. And I live on High Street between 10th and 11th. And I'd just like to say that this building is very unwelcoming to people who have mobility issues, including old people. And I think it would be really wonderful to have a city hall that had a very welcoming plaza and that fit in with the new way the city seems to be developing, which is really welcoming downtown. It's become very much more welcoming in the last 5 or 6 or 7 years. And, you know, in this building, you have to go around the corner into a very dark space to get up the ramp. I mean, it's terrible, and that really makes it so people can't interact with each other. We don't really have a chance to be a part of the whole community. So it's it'd be very nice for everyone if we had a building that was accessible and also beautiful in downtown. So I'd go with the new building.
Thank you. Scott Bartlett is next, followed by Marvin Revolt.
My name's Scott Bartlett, 1445 East 21st. I'm not here to proponent back either option per se. But I will say this. We, the people of Eugene, are entitled to the truth as to what the entire project will cost. It's not rocket science to estimate what a 100,000 square foot building built in the next 10 years will cost. I think it's something that we have a right to expect. With all due respect, I don't think that those who are advocating the preservation of the building are nutty, as was said earlier. We just want to know which side is actually correct. I watched on TV the presentation, and I've been around for a long time, and it was very well orchestrated to rebut the people that want to save it. But as James Carville, the mastermind of Clinton's election, said, you can't expect people to deal with information they do not have. Give us that information. What's going to happen on Wednesday is you have motions that will go, the majority will pass it, and that'll be the end of it. But You don't want to build a new City Hall complex on a foundation of distrust. Mark my words. You can see the tide of public opinion leaving this. And if you just fast track this and do this, when you come around or your successors come around to have that second stage, will you get it? And I would hope you do. And if the facts are such that the proposed new building, which looks beautiful in scheme, is the best, most cost-effective way, I'll be very enthusiastic about it. But tell us the truth and have some independent arm's-length evaluation for it before you fast-track it. Thank you.
Marvin Mavola is next, followed by Juan Carlos Valier.
Good evening. My name is Marvin Ruol, and I live at 2924 Adams Street in Eugene. And I'm here discussing tonight because you have an opportunity to direct the city manager to make a significant change in how the city of Eugene does business, and that is the opportunity to create programs that will allow you to work with certified companies. 3 years ago, the Department of Transportation asked my company to become a certified company, which is a DBE status, a WB or an MBE status, also Veterans Administrations and women-owned businesses. And I said no, because frankly, I had become disillusioned about working with municipalities, particularly in our own community, because I often heard terms that, well, we are race neutral or gender neutral. In fact, in this world in which we live, we are more family and friends in doing business. You take care of my cat, so I'll do business with you. You went to the U of O with me, I'll do business with you. And after 25 years of building a company with offices in Portland and Eugene, I can tell you it's a little different than that. So I would ask you to direct the city manager to look at some of your organizations that are north of you, Portland Public Schools, the City of Portland, Multnomah County, TriMet, and take a look at a different way of doing business. We're not asking for a special favor. We're not even asking for a hand up. We're just asking to make a level playing field. We don't have that right now. And my employees would thank you. And my wife told me she'd thank you too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Last up is Juan Carlos Valier.
There he is.
Good evening, Mayor, President, Councilors. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Juan Carlos Valle. I live in Ward 2, South Eugene. I am here as a council president for the League of United Latin American Citizens of Lane County. I am here to encourage you to have a meaningful and clear discussion that will lead to changes in how we do businesses or business with, and about including minorities-owned businesses in city contracts. LULAC believes in ensuring that all in our business community have an opportunity to do business with their government. Some of you know that contract with minority-owned businesses is important to customers. We are becoming a welcoming and open community for minority populations. Now we need to ensure that we also do business with minority-owned enterprise. Why is this important? It is important because we have an obligation in government to secure equity in contracting and engage to participate in contracts with using taxpayer dollars. We can establish a business-friendly approach, identify it, avoid, and then fill it. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. On this particular overdue issue, you can direct staff to bring back all details of established programs, such as the ones up north in Portland area. Let us work in reducing the barriers, and let us work on securing more minority-owned businesses to be a part of this process. There are barriers to implement initiatives like the one you have in front of you later tonight. Some of the barriers range from lack of outreach to the minority community to shortage in minority-owned businesses in fields where city-owned contracts. Yes, there is a certification process. But please keep in mind that as part of this review, you must support an application process that takes significantly fewer steps to be certified as Minority Business Enterprise, or MBE. By increasing opportunities to the MBEs to do business with the city, the MBE certification program has the objective of facilitating economic growth and development within the minority business community. You have an opportunity to set aside some funds to make some MBEs get the proper certification. I hope you do not delay this decision in action. Please keep in mind that it takes leadership and courage to include minority-owned businesses in this process. Thank you.
I'm going to close the public hearing, and before I turn to my colleagues to see if anybody has anything they want to say, I just want to clarify a misstatement that was made earlier by Mr. Beck. I do actually feel very strongly about the City of Eugene having a city hall that they can be proud of. But I want to be clear that I was an early supporter of looking at renovation as an option. And that has not been the direction Council has chosen to go for that thus far. And so I'm trying, my job is to help them get in the direction they choose to go. So that's what I've been working on with them and will continue to work on them. I have no designs on City Hall. Okay. Any other comments? Yes.
Thank you. Thanks to everyone who came out to speak tonight on the various topics and the various points of view. It's very much appreciated and really important part of our civic process. And on this topic of City Hall, while there were many points of debate offered tonight, I wanted to respond to just one in particular, and that's about which choice gets us the most for our money. And frankly, I want to poke a big hole in that argument and reference Councilor Clark's letter to the editor, I think today or yesterday. I think it's important to recall that this council debated a series of choices, including whether or not to relocate to the eWeb building. And I don't think anyone can seriously claim that this is an empirical choice about what is the cheapest option, or we would be having this meeting in the eWeb building. Because that was clearly the most cost-effective choice based solely on the amount of square footage that we would get for the money. We would have been able to bring back all the scattered departments that everyone keeps talking about as part of Phase 2. But when we had that debate, we heard from the community that they valued staying on the current site, even though they knew it would cost more money to do that. So I really think as we're thinking about this is a series of values decisions that we've made, and one of those decision points was no, the community would rather spend more money to stay on the current site. So I don't think it's an equal argument to say whether we rebuild or do a whole new building, that it's a choice between which is most cost effective. The eWeb choice would have been the most cost effective, and those of you who are arguing that it's a choice about cost effective would have been here advocating for us to go to the eWeb building. So I just think that's a really important thing for us to remember as a community. So I also really appreciated the comments. There was only a couple of folks who expressed frustration about the fact that we don't seem to be following our own process, and that we frustration about that we're even having this discussion tonight. We agreed to this timeout because there appeared to be a perception in part of the community that we hadn't vetted this decision sufficiently. And so as noted, this is a big decision, so it seemed fitting to pause momentarily to review how we arrived here. And we've had many conversations about our values, and that is what has informed the decision that we've taken, the direction that we've taken. So I just wanted to make that emphatic statement. I look forward to our Wednesday meeting, where I hope we will collectively affirm those values and vision for City Hall.
Anyone else? Okay, I see no one else with their hands up. So now we have what is basically 25 minutes left, and I'm looking to Greg about this because I don't want to shortchange this discussion on the disadvantaged minority city contracting.
Want to go ahead and do the consent calendar?
We could do that. I just want to know what he wants to do.
I don't know how long the staff presentation is going to be around this and whether we'll have enough time to this very short. And if we can get through the consent calendar and the other items that we've got, then I'm good with us moving forward.
Okay, and the only thing I'd say about that, it's the first of a number of discussions.
There'll be other discussions around policy development.
Okay, let's do the consent calendar. Council President?
I move to approve the items on the consent calendar.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor, please indicate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor, none in opposition. All right, we're going to have a work session now on disadvantaged and minority city contracting.
Take your conversations outside.
You're on, Vicki.
All right, it's a little
Thanks,
different
everybody.
being here,
Just
not
keep
talking
on
about the
heading
budget.
outside to talk. That would be great. Drix. Evan. Go on. Yeah. All right.
All right. Good evening. I'm Vicki Silvers, and I'm the City of Eugene's purchasing manager. And I'm happy to be here this evening to provide you with some information in response to Council's request for a work session on city contracting with minorities and women-owned businesses, disadvantaged businesses, and emerging small businesses. To help you this evening with the tongue-tying, I'm going to keep my reference to MWESBs and DBEs. I don't have to say all that other stuff. Research shows that MWESBs in the state of Oregon are outpacing business growth, mainstream business growth, and they are a large part of the business community in the state of Oregon. So it makes sense to have an awareness of this business community and to maximize access for contracting with the City of Eugene in order to meet Council's goal of sustainable development. To help you with this conversation tonight, I'm going to provide you with some information about what the city is legally allowed to do and what our current business practice is with regards to contracting with MWESBs and DBEs. Public contracting in the state of Oregon is guided by statute. Many sections of the statute allow us to have to create our own rules, and while the city can be more restrictive, we cannot be more permissive. What can we do legally with contracting with MWESBs and DBEs? There are two areas in ORS that speak to this. One is that in order to achieve affirmative action goals, we can limit competition for purchases of $50,000 or less. The other is that we can require subcontractors or contractors to subcontract with or obtain materials from a person or business that is certified as an emerging small business or that is owned or controlled by a disabled veteran. In general, ORS city regulations assure that there is a fair and open process in awarding city contracts. The process varies depending on the dollar amount, but in general, for purchases of $5,000 or less or more, there is some type of solicitation process. It's important to note that many solicitations carry the requirement of low-cost bid award. There's a city purchasing policy that we follow that is to utilize public contracting practices and methods that maximize the efficient use of public resources and the purchasing power of public funds. And this brings up an issue that we often wrestle with, and that's the tension between maximizing cost efficiency and meeting low bid requirements and achieving city goals like sustainability. We also make sure that MWESBs and DBEs are afforded equal opportunity to participate in solicitation processes when competing for city business. Internally, we include in every solicitation document social equity language that encourages the use of MWESBs and DBEs for subcontracting in the purchasing of supplies. Also, my purchasing staff attend events that provide opportunities for vendors to meet with us. For example, the U of O hosts what's called a reverse vendor fair, where we go set up a table, and vendors throughout the community can come and learn more about contracting with public organizations. There's also the Governor's Marketplace, which is an event that's held by the state that specifically targets MWESBs and DBEs. For some solicitations, we advertise in the Oregon Procurement Information Network, which actively promotes MWESBs and DBEs. Solicitations are also posted at the city's website and in trade organization magazines. Anyone can go to the city website and see what open bids are there, and you can sign up to have an email or text message sent to you when something new is posted. This purchasing office has an electronic solicitation system called eBid. If a vendor is interested in working with the city, they go online and they register their business. And when a bid is open for the area that they do work in or provide supplies in, they'll get a notice, an invitation to bid. To provide you with an idea of the reach we have with those solicitations, I pulled some information from some recent projects. We recently solicited a small renovation project, and the request for quotes went to 815 vendors. We sent 186 vendors an invitation for a $20,000 IT project, and for a recent plumbing and drainage solicitation, we sent the invitation to bid to 565 vendors. So we have a lot of folks that we try to work with. Additionally, in the eBid system, vendors can self-designate that they are MWESB or DBE certified. To date, we have 792 vendors designated as women-owned, 483 as minority-owned, and 176 designated as a DBE. This is out of almost 6,000 registered businesses, and we're continually adding new vendors. Since the beginning of this month, we've had 22 new registrations. Lastly, our purchasing office staff are available for technical support 5 days a week, 8 to 5. Businesses can call us if they need help with signing up on the eBid system or if they have questions about solicitations. I think it's worth mentioning that this fall the purchasing office is going through a revamp of our business process, and we'll be working on a variety of ways to improve how we do purchasing throughout the city and how we can reach more vendors and diversify our work. And that's all I have for you. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilor Clark?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. I wish I knew more about process than I know, but that would take us a good deal longer to talk about, I think. I don't have any interest in set-asides and percentages and that sort of way to deal with this issue, but when Amanda Marvin's character stands up and says it's not fair the way it's being dealt with, that makes me real curious. I really want to understand that better, and certainly better than I do, and certainly better than we have time for right now. So I don't know the best way to deal with that. I don't know how to explore it from here the best way, but I want to understand how, and I'm not saying that is intentional. Maybe there's a unintentional way we've built our process that has that effect. And so I would like to see us explore this in a little bit more detail than I think we have time for tonight. Thanks.
That's what I would suggest, Mayor. Regardless where you get tonight, I think it might be valuable to have another work session to spend more time kind of working through it, because I do think we could get more into some detail and broader questions and really try to explore it a little bit more. So regardless where you get tonight, I suggest we come back with another work session.
Councilor Clark, are you finished?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mayor.
So before I call on Councilor Surratt and Pryor and Evans, I'd just like to suggest City Manager. City Manager?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry.
I just want to suggest, and I think you'd probably do it anyway, but I hope that you will sort of open up a discussion with members of the minority community and women and so forth, just to hear what their concerns are and to really have an understanding of where they think we might could better improve what we do.
Yeah, definitely. So I think partly what we're just wanting to see if the council continues to want to have more conversation about, and then we'll go do more of the work and come back for another work session, I think. So.
Councilor Surratt?
Thank you. I really appreciate Councilor Evans bringing this forward, and I would like to have another work session on this and dive into this more deeply. I was curious if we know, out of all those vendors that we have connections with, how do we know how many minority-owned or women-owned vendors we actually have contracted with?
That's a good question. We do not have that data. Our contracting tracking system is somewhat antiquated, so that's a challenge. I'm working on trying to get the data of how much we spend with those that have self-designated.
Gotcha. Thanks. I think that'd be very valuable information to kind of benchmark where we are. And Councilor Clark used the word intentionality. I think intentionality is the key, that if we're intentional about wanting to create goals around this, then that's how we make progress towards reaching those goals. If we just say, oh, it's a nice idea, let's write some words about it somewhere, and we don't actually have the intention to follow through and get some data and benchmark, then we're not going to get there. In public comment, there was references to neighbors to the north who have taken on this challenge and apparently have some models that may be working, and maybe we can look at those at the next work session to help inform what kinds of things we might implement here in Eugene to get towards a more fair system that I think I would suspect a majority of our council would support. Thank you.
Councilor Pryor.
Thank you. I too appreciate Councilor Evans bringing this forward. I think it's very important. I can remember, oh golly, this was probably 30 years ago when I worked at a minority-owned business, so was trying to get work, and it was very challenging to try to get work because there was no consideration. It wasn't a factor necessarily, and being kind of frustrated by the fact that that there was talk about it, but we were never able to get in. And so for me, it really kind of broke into three areas that I would be interested, for the purposes of another work session, that we could explore what our opportunities were. And the first one was the solicitation process, which you mentioned. How do we make sure that we're getting solicitations out so that people are even aware that there is an opportunity there? Oftentimes, particularly if you're a small business, you're not plugged into a lot of the networks. And so how can we ensure that a lot of people know that these opportunities are even coming up? So the process around solicitation, you mentioned you do track now, which is great. How can we take advantage of that? Second area is in qualifying. When you come up with the specifications for a bid or a requirement, you want everybody to be able to perform that work, and you don't want to hire somebody who can't perform the work simply because they fell into some other category. So how can you make the qualification process compatible with these other elements so that it doesn't create an obstacle, but it can actually help to move things along? And then the last piece, which was the actual selection. Because I know I've seen information that says preference given to, but that still can be a fairly loose process when you just say preference given to. But I've served on panels that oftentimes use number systems or grading systems or point measurement systems, and it's very easy to provide additional points, additional value. I mean, this is all stuff you already know. But the actual selection process, what are our options, what the opportunities that we would have to be awarding points or providing some sort of a measurable preference and still stay within, state law. So the solicitation, the qualification, and the selection process, I think, would be three areas that, for me, would really be worthwhile having some conversation about what can we do in each one of those areas to make this process work more smoothly. So I love what you're doing so far, and these would be my interests.
Councilor Evans.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we do need to probably have another long-form discussion about this. But I want to point out that we're not talking about set-asides or anything like that. That's 1980s language. We're talking about goals and aspirations. We're talking about a way of doing business that the city commits to that's similar to our neighbors to the north. TriMet several years ago committed to engaging minority and women-owned businesses and was extremely successful in doing so. They had a rail project that engaged 24% minority participation. That is a commitment to walking your talk that we have not had this conversation here yet in this city. And I think it's incumbent that this council leads the way for other agencies and organizations south of the Portland metro area to make sure that we are engaging our emerging businesses, our disadvantaged businesses, our women-owned businesses, our minority businesses, because they're here, they're trying to get in, they're trying to break into the system. And one of the ways that you build your organization is by having contracts not just in the private sector, but also in the public sector. And it's been very hard, and I've spoken to a lot of business people in this area, for them to break into the public domain. And part of it is because we have antiquated policies and procedures that need to be updated and need to be revised. And so I think that our discussion needs to be built around the revision of those policies and procedures, much the same way that we've had conversations around sustainability issues and other issues on this council, and we've moved forward with those issues. I think it's time that we did the same thing with minority and women-owned businesses. I'll tell you, I've been here, 19 months now or something of that nature, going on 20 months, and I have seen very few people of color walking through here doing business with the city. Now, I might be wrong with that. However, we don't have the mechanisms in place to track those contracts and to actually identify who we're working with. So I think that there's a number of holes in our game that need to be closed, if you will, so that we can move forward with, a more robust program that includes all of our business community in the city and not just the same list of the usual suspects.
Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Well, we've begun the conversation. Yes?
No.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Great.